Today, we are diving into a really critical issue, one that affects the very beginning of life for millions of kids here in America: food insecurity. We're going to look at the shocking numbers, the long-term effects, and the support systems that are making a huge difference, and also why those very systems might be at risk. So let's just start with a number, because this one, it really tells a story. Nearly 2 million. That is the number of infants and toddlers. We're talking kids under 3, who were living in homes that struggled to afford food in 2023 alone. You know, this isn't some abstract number. It's a real-life situation happening in neighborhoods all across the country. So, what do we actually mean when we say food insecurity? It's not just about being hungry for a day. It's this constant, underlying stress of not knowing if you can afford enough food to live a healthy, active life. It's a year-round state of uncertainty that millions of families are dealing with. To really get a handle on this, we need to dig a little deeper into the data. This first part of our explainer is all about understanding the true scale of what's often a hidden crisis, one that hits the most vulnerable people in our society the hardest. And right away, this chart shows us something really important. The rate of food insecurity is already about 12% in households that don't have kids. But look what happens when there are infants and toddlers in the home. It jumps to over 15%. So the takeaway here is pretty stark. Just having our youngest children at home significantly increases a family's risk of facing this struggle. But here's where the numbers get really, really stark. When we break it down by race and ethnicity, the disparities are just staggering. For young kids in American Indian, Pacific Islander, Black, and Hispanic households, the rates are dramatically higher. We're talking more than double, or in some cases even triple the rates for children in white or Asian households. And you have to understand, this isn't just about a kid being hungry for an afternoon. The kind of impact that food insecurity can have at this critical stage of development, well, it can ripple out across a person's entire life. So let's take a look at what the research says about these lifelong consequences. Yeah, what the source material shows is pretty sobering. This kind of hardship early on is linked to a whole cascade of problems down the line. We're talking about everything from physical and mental health issues in adulthood to lower economic well-being. And think about it. When caregivers are stressed out just trying to put food on the table, that stress is directly linked to worse outcomes for their kids. But it's not all bad news. Not at all. There's another side to this story, and it's about what actually works. So now we're going to look at 2 federal programs that really act as a lifeline for millions of families, and they have proven positive effects. So you've got these 2 main pillars of support. On one hand, there's SNAP, which is the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. It's the biggest child nutrition program in the country, helping about 1 in every 5 kids. And then there's WIC, which stands for Women, Infants, and Children. It's a bit more targeted, really zeroing in on new and expecting parents, babies, and young kids. Okay, now look at this number, $6.20. That's the average daily SNAP benefit per person. I know, it might not sound like a lot, right? But as you're about to see, the impact of that $6 and change is, well, it's massive. I mean, just look at the return on that investment. It's incredible. The research shows that getting SNAP benefits in early childhood leads to better birth outcomes, better health as an adult, higher educational achievement, and even higher earnings later in life. It's a foundational support that literally pays dividends for a person's entire lifetime. And it's the same story with WIC. The impact here is huge, especially right around the time of birth. We're talking about a reduced risk of premature birth, of low birth weight, and even lower infant mortality rates. That makes WIC an absolutely crucial tool for fighting some of these serious health disparities we see. So these programs are proven to work, right? But here's the catch. There's a huge gap. This chart from 2022 shows that a massive number of families who are eligible for WIC just aren't enrolled. Get this, more than half of all eligible pregnant parents were missing out. And you can see participation drops off even more as the kids get a little older. But hey, there is a bright spot here. It looks like the efforts to close that gap are actually starting to pay off. Between 2022 and 2024, WIC participation nationwide went up by a solid 7.1%. So that suggests that with some focused effort, we can get this support to more of the families who need it. But just as things are starting to look up, the entire system of nutrition assistance could be facing a massive shakeup. In this last section, we're going to look at a potential policy change that's described in the source material, one that could completely change the game. So what's this all about? Well, the source material talks about a proposed megabill for 2025. This bill would cut federal funding for SNAP by about 20%. That's $187 billion over the next 10 years. To put that in perspective, it would be the single largest cut to the program in its history. So you might be wondering, how would a cut like that actually play out? Well, the source breaks it down into 3 basic steps. First, the federal funding gets cut big time. Second, for the first time ever, states would have to start paying for a chunk of SNAP benefits themselves. And that leads to step 3. States are stuck with a really tough choice. They'd have to figure out how to cover those new costs, either by raising taxes, cutting other services, or just cutting the SNAP benefits people get. And the potential ripple effects from that decision could be, well, they could be huge. The source points out that kids could lose their automatic sign-up for things like free school meals or summer food programs. And in a worst-case scenario, if a state just can't or won't cover the new costs, they could decide to leave the program altogether, which would end all SNAP assistance in that state. And really, it all comes back to this one core idea, which is summed up perfectly in this quote from the source. When public policies provide economic security for their families, children tend to have better educational, health, and behavioral outcomes. The data we've seen on all this makes that connection crystal clear. So, that's the data. That's the situation. And it all kind of leaves us with this one big question to think about. When you look at the reality of this hardship, the proven success of these support programs, and then the potential for massive changes on the horizon, it really makes you stop and ask, how do the choices a nation makes today truly end up shaping the lives of its youngest and most vulnerable citizens tomorrow?